Good evening and welcome to Global Lens News. I'm Sadia Afzal. Over the past few weeks, some of the world's most influential newspapers, from the Financial Times to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Reuters and others, have been raising serious concerns about Donald Trump's handling of the escalating war with Iran. This isn't just political disagreement. What we are seeing is a growing consensus across global media that Trump's strategy might be risky, inconsistent, and potentially dangerous, not just for the United States, but for global stability. So what exactly are these criticisms? Let's break it down. First, one of the biggest concerns is lack of a clear strategy. The Financial Times has repeatedly argued that Trump's Iran policy lacks a long-term plan. In recent analysis pieces, it suggests there is no clear exit strategy and warns that the United States could get stuck in another prolonged Middle East conflict, something similar to Iraq or Afghanistan. This concern isn't isolated. The New York Times has also questioned the justification and clarity behind the war, pointing out that the administration has offered multiple, sometimes conflicting reasons for launching military action, ranging from nuclear threats to regime change. When a government cannot clearly explain why a war is being fought, critics argue, it becomes much harder to control how that war ends. Second, there is growing alarm about escalation without control. Recent reporting shows Trump threatening major strikes on Iran's infrastructure, including energy and power systems, while at the same time suddenly pausing those strikes, claiming productive talks. The kind of back and forth decision-making is being described as unpredictable. The Financial Times frames this as dangerous brinkmanship, pushing a conflict to the edge without a stable diplomatic path. Meanwhile, The Guardian reports that while Trump claims negotiations are happening, Iran has denied any direct talks, raising doubts about whether diplomacy is actually working. In simple terms, one side says talks are happening, the other says they are not. The disconnect itself is a warning sign. Third, critics say Trump may be fighting too many battles at once. In a sharply critical opinion, the Washington Post argues that Trump is effectively engaging in two major conflicts simultaneously: a global trade war and a military confrontation with Iran. It points out a basic principle of strategy: don't fight on two fronts at the same time. According to the article, doing so risks overstretching US resources, weakening alliances, and ultimately failing in both conflicts. This is a key point. Wars are not just about military strength. They depend heavily on alliances, economic stability, and global cooperation. And that leads to the next criticism. Fourth, Trump's approach is straining alliances. Reports indicate that several US allies have been hesitant or unwilling to fully support the Iran campaign. At the same time, Trump has publicly criticized allies for not participating, while also claiming the US doesn't need their help, a contradiction that analysts say weakens diplomatic credibility. The Financial Times and other outlets interpret this as a sign of strategic isolation, where the US is acting more alone in a conflict that traditionally requires coalition support. Fifth, there are serious concerns about economic consequences. According to Reuters, the war has already led to rising fuel prices and growing public dissatisfaction. A recent poll shows Trump's approval rating dropping to 36%, with the majority of Americans opposing the war and worrying that it makes the country less safe. Fuel prices have increased significantly, and global oil markets have been disrupted, especially due to tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy routes. So the criticism here is not just strategic, it's also economic. War, in this case, is hitting people directly in their daily lives. Sixth, Some outlets are questioning the credibility of Trump's claims. Fact-checking and reporting from multiple sources, including the New York Times, have highlighted instances where Trump's statements about Iran's capabilities or the progress of the war may be exaggerated or inconsistent with available evidence. For example, claims that Iran's nuclear program had been completely destroyed have been disputed by experts and international agencies. Why does this matter? Because credibility is critical in war. If leadership messaging becomes unreliable, it becomes harder to maintain both domestic and international trust. Seventh, there are concerns about unpredictability and sudden policy shifts. One recent episode illustrates this very clearly. Trump issued a strong ultimatum to Iran: reopen key shipping routes or face major attacks, only to suddenly pause military action days later. According to reporting, this shift may have been influenced by diplomatic pressure, economic concerns, or market reactions. But critics argue that such abrupt changes suggest reactive decision-making rather than a structured plan. Finally, there is the broader concern: where does this all lead? Across Financial Times, Washington Post, New York Times, and others, a common theme emerges: no clear end goal, rising risk of wider regional war, economic damage already visible, allies uncertain or divided, and strategy that appears very inconsistent. Even within Trump's own political base, some commentators have begun questioning whether this war aligns with his original America First promise to avoid prolonged foreign conflicts. So what does all this mean? It means that many of the world's most respected news organizations see serious risks in how this war is being handled. And when multiple independent outlets across countries and political perspectives start raising similar concerns, it usually signals something deeper than simple bias. It suggests a real debate about leadership, strategy, and consequences. In the end, the biggest question is not just about Iran. It's about whether this approach, rapid escalation, shifting messaging, and limited clarity can succeed in a conflict as complex as the Middle East. Because history shows that wars are not just started by decisions. They are defined by how those decisions are managed over time. And right now, according to much of the global media, that management is exactly what's under scrutiny. This is Sadia Afzal for Global Lens News.